Welcome back to the deep dive. We are really glad you're here because today we are going to do something that might just fundamentally mess with some of your core childhood memories.
It's one of those foundational stories we all think we know.
We think we know, exactly. We're talking about, well, probably the most famous container in human history.
It's the ultimate metaphor for, oops.
It is. I mean, you know the story. Everybody does. The very first woman, a forbidden container. She's told, whatever you do not open this. But of course, curiosity gets the better of her.
It always does.
She lifts the lid and suddenly, whoosh, sickness, death, misery, traffic jams, the IRS, it all flies out into the world.
The whole litany of human suffering. And the only thing that gets trapped inside at the end is hope.
It's the classic story of Pandora's box.
It's the foundational myth of the West for explaining the problem of evil. It's the story we tell ourselves to explain why life is hard.
Right. But here is the hook for today, and I really need you to brace yourself because this is where we start rewriting the mental hard drive.
Okay.
There never was a box.
That is absolutely correct.
For thousands of years in the original Greek telling, the object in question was never a box. It wasn't a chest, it wasn't a casket, it wasn't some little ornate jewelry case.
Nope. It was a jar. A massive ceramic storage jar.
A pithos.
A pithos, to be precise.
Right.
And we are absolutely going to get into why that matters so much, because it is not just a minor detail for, a trivia night.
Right.
The distinction between a little handheld box and a massive semi-permanent jar, it fundamentally changes the entire symbolism of the myth.
How so?
It changes how we view the character of Pandora. It changes the nature of the evils that were supposedly inside. And frankly, it completely reframes how we should view the origin of humanity's suffering.
Okay, so that is our mission for this deep dive. We are going to unpack the real story of Pandora. We're not treating this as some simple bedtime story or just a warning label from the ancient Greeks. We're looking at this as a complex psychological framework.
It really is a multidisciplinary puzzle. You can't just look at it from one angle.
No, you can't. And look at the sources we have stacked up here. We've got the original poetry of Hesiod from the 8th century BCE to set our baseline.
The source code, basically.
The source code. Then we've got archaeological reports on, of all things, ceramic storage and ancient funereal practices.
Which turns out to be crucial.
So crucial. Then we have Jungian psychological analysis on archetypes and cultural narratives. And then we're going to fast forward thousands of years to today and look at behavioral science experiments on curiosity and, of course, the ethics of artificial intelligence.
It's actually surprising, even a little bit spooky, how perfectly this ancient narrative maps onto our deepest anxieties about modern technology.
You're right. We're still talking about opening black boxes and dealing with unintended releases.
The architecture of the story hasn't changed at all, even if the technology has gone from fire to, generative AI.
So the stakes here are pretty high. This isn't just about a girl in a jar. It's about why we are the way we are. It's about the origin of evil, the deeply confusing nature of hope, and why we have this compulsive biological need to push the button, even when we know it might just blow up in our faces.
It really gets at the core question, doesn't it? Is human curiosity a virtue, or is it a death sentence?
Let's dive in. Let's start with the canonical myth. We have to strip away the Disneyfied versions and get right back to the source code. We're looking at the poet Hesiod. So, set the scene for us. Where are we? When are we? And what is the world like before Pandora shows up?
Okay, so we're in the 8th or maybe 7th century BCE, and Hesiod is our primary guide. He tells this story in 2 major works. The Theogony, which is, the birth of the gods, their family tree.
Right, the cosmic soap opera.
Exactly. And then there's Works and Days, which is, for all intents and purposes, a moral handbook for farmers. Very practical text. And the context he establishes right at the start is crucial. He describes a golden age of humanity that existed before the arrival of women.
An all-male society, then?
Yes, an exclusively all-male society living in close proximity to the gods. And the key feature of this existence, the word he keeps using, is ease.
Ease. So what does that mean in practice?
It means they didn't have to work hard for their food. The earth just gave up its bounty willingly. No agriculture needed. They didn't get sick. They didn't suffer from the aches and pains of aging. They just lived long, peaceful lives and then sort of faded away like a dream.
So it's less like a civilization and more like a permanent cosmic vacation, just guys lounging around, eating grapes, hanging out with Zeus.
In a way, yeah. It was a static existence. No death, no reproduction, no labor. A kind of paradise. But then we get the inciting incident. The crime that ruptures this perfect world.
And this is where Prometheus comes in.
This is where Prometheus comes in. He's a Titan, not an Olympian, and his name is incredibly important for this entire discussion. Prometheus literally translates to foresight,
The one who thinks ahead.
the one who thinks ahead. He looks at this human society, these men living in their simple ease, and he decides to elevate them. He feels sorry for them, so he steals fire from the Olympians and gives it to humanity.
And we should probably clarify here, in the Greek context, fire isn't just for warmth. It's not just for a campfire.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Fire is techne. It's technology. It's the capacity for civilization itself. It means metallurgy. It means tools. It means cooking food, which changes human biology. It means the ability to shape and control the environment.
So by giving them fire, Prometheus is basically kickstarting human progress.
He is effectively narrowing the gap between mortal men and the immortal gods. He empowers them. He gives them agency.
And Zeus, the CEO of Olympus, is not happy about this little bit of corporate espionage.
Zeus is incandescent with rage. It's not just the theft itself. It's the disruption of the cosmic hierarchy. Men were supposed to be dependent. Now they have power. So he decides there must be a punishment.
Not just for Prometheus, right? He gets his own special punishment.
Oh, yeah. Prometheus gets chained to a rock to have his liver eaten out by an eagle every single day for eternity. But Zeus decides the beneficiaries of the theft, humanity, need their own punishment. And it has to be a special kind of punishment, a counter gift, a poison pill that looks like a reward.
And that punishment is the first woman. This is the part of the text that always just, it floors me. It's presented as this coordinated, almost industrial manufacturing process. It wasn't just Zeus snapping his fingers.
No, flat out.
He calls in the entire Olympian workforce. It's like an Avengers team up, but the mission is to create a trap.
It is absolutely a team effort.
Yeah.
And Hesiod lists the contributors very specifically. Zeus orders Hephaestus, the smith god, the divine engineer, to mold her form. And he specifies the materials, earth and water. Clay. He wants her to have the face of a goddess, stunning, immortal in appearance, but to be made of the earth. And Hesiod uses this very specific chilling phrase to describe her. He calls her a Kalon Kakon,
Which translates to,
a beautiful evil.
wow, just blunt. So Hephaestus builds the hardware. Who comes in to install the software?
Everyone chips in. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and craft, she teaches her the art of weaving. She dresses her in silvery, shining raiment. So she gives her the appearance of industry and grace.
She makes her look civilized.
Exactly. Then you have the Sherites, who are the Graces, and they place these beautiful golden necklaces on her. The Horai, the seasons, they crown her head with spring flowers. She's being meticulously designed to be visually irresistible.
An aesthetic masterpiece, a honeypot.
Precisely. Then Aphrodite, the goddess of love, she steps in. She sheds grace upon her head, but also, and this is a direct quote from the text, cruel longing and cares that weary the limbs.
Wait, cruel longing.
Oh.
So she is literally engineered to cause desire and emotional turmoil in men.
Yes, to make them tired and distracted. She's a drain on their resources by design. But the most critical contribution, the one that really seals her function as a trap, that comes from Hermes,
The messenger god, the trickster.
the trickster. Hermes is ordered by Zeus to put in her a shameless mind and a deceitful nature. And he gives her the power of speech, specifically for the purpose of telling lies.
Oh, so her very voice is a weapon.
Her mind, her nature, her voice, it's all part of the trap. And that is where she finally gets her name, Pandora. It means all gifted.
Because all the Olympians gave her a gift.
Exactly. But every single gift was weaponized. It is a profoundly cynical and frankly misogynistic view. In Hesiod's cosmology, the woman is not created as a companion or partner.
Go.
She is a manufactured object created for the sole purpose of tormenting men, consuming their resources, and introducing complexity, deception, and suffering into that simple, easy golden age life. She is the price tag for the gift of fire.
Okay, so the trap is set. The beautiful evil is assembled. Now, Prometheus, being foresight, he must have seen this coming, right?
He did. He warned his brother explicitly. He said, never, ever accept a gift from Olympian Zeus. If he sends you something, send it back immediately lest it bring harm to men.
But the brother, he's not quite as sharp.
The brother is Epimetheus. And just as Prometheus means foresight, Epimetheus means hindsight.
Oh, of course. Perfect. The man who only understands things after the damage is already done.
That's the one. So Epimetheus sees Pandora arrive. He is utterly dazzled by the Kalon Kakon, this beautiful evil. He completely forgets his brother's warning. He accepts her into his home. And with her comes the vessel.
The jar.
The jar. Now, the text is a little ambiguous here. In some tellings, the jar is a wedding gift from Zeus that she brings with her. In others, it's a storage jar that was already in Epimetheus' house, and she just finds it. But the crucial moment is the opening.
She opens it. Why? Was it malice?
Hesiod doesn't actually assign a motive like malice. It's more like a mix of curiosity and perhaps just fulfilling her design purpose. He simply says she removed the great lid from the jar, and out flew the plagues.
And let's be specific about what these are. These aren't just, mosquitoes and flies.
No, we are talking about the fundamental miseries of the human condition. Hard, grinding toil, painful, wasting sickness, decrepit old age, sorrow, all the griefs. Hesiod writes that before this moment, the tribes of men lived on earth free from these evils. But once that lid was off, the earth and the sea were suddenly full of them.
That's the end of the Golden Age?
It is the hard stop, the beginning of the reality that we all know now. And as this cloud of misery envelops the world, she manages to slam the lid shut again, just in time to trap one thing inside.
Elpis. Hope. Hope.
We are definitely going to circle back to Elpis because the philosophical implications of hope being in a jar full of pure evil are, well, staggering. But I really want to pause on this box versus jar thing because we all call it Pandora's box. Everyone. If I went to a coffee shop right now and said it's a real Pandora's jar, I'd get corrected. How did we get this so fundamentally wrong? It is one of the most fascinating and impactful translation errors in all of Western literature. It's a genuine linguistic glitch that became a cultural reality. And we can trace the error back to a very specific person and time.
Oh, we know who did it.
We do. The culprit was the great 16th century humanist Erasmus of Rotterdam.
The same guy the student exchange program is named after.
That's very same. So in 1508, he was compiling this massive collection of Greek and Latin proverbs called the Adagia. And for one of them, he was translating Hesiod's Greek into Latin.
Okay.
In the original Greek, Hesiod used the word pithos. That is the specific technical term for a large earthenware storage jar. But when Erasmus translated it, he wrote the Latin word pyxis.
And Pixis is?
A pyx is a small box or a casket. Think of a jewelry box or a container for cosmetics or medicines, a small, often ornate personal item.
So he messed up. Was it a simple mistake? A typo?
Well, it's debated. Some scholars think he might have confused the Pandora myth with the myth of Cupid and Psyche, where Psyche has to carry a pyxis of beauty ointment back from the underworld.
Ah. So a simple mix-up.
Possibly. Others think it was just a lapse in his otherwise formidable scholarship. But whatever the reason, that one word change pithos to pyxis completely altered how Western culture visualizes the story for the next 500 years.
But why does it matter so much? Okay, so we picture a box instead of a jar. Apart from historical accuracy, does the shape of the container really change the core meaning of the myth?
It changes the materiality and the symbolism profoundly. I mean, think about a box. It's something you can hold in your hands. It's portable. It's domestic. It belongs on a vanity table.
Right. It feels like a trinket.
It trivializes the object. It makes the story feel like Pandora was just, snooping through her husband's dresser or opening a forbidden jewelry box. It frames the act as petty, feminine curiosity.
But a pithos, that's a different beast entirely.
A pithos is massive. It's a piece of infrastructure. We're talking about a ceramic vessel that could be anywhere from 1/2 meter to 2 meters high. These things were huge, heavy. You couldn't just pick one up and run off with it.
How were they used?
Primarily for agricultural storage. They were the ancient equivalent of silos or barrels. You'd store wine, olive oil, grain, fermented fish sauce. And because of their size and weight, they were often buried halfway into the ground, in the floor of a storeroom or a courtyard.
To keep the contents cool and stable?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is not a personal accessory. This is a semi-permanent fixture of the household, connected to the earth. And here is where the symbolism gets much, much darker.
Okay.
Pithoi weren't just used for grain and wine. Archaeologically, we have abundant evidence from the Bronze and Iron Ages that they were very commonly used as coffins.
Wait, what? People were buried in them?
Yes. It was a common form of burial, especially for infants and children, but for adults as well. The body would be placed inside in a fetal position, and the jar would be sealed and buried.
So, to an ancient Greek audience, hearing the word pissos would immediately bring up connotations of
Of both life and death. It's the womb of the earth that provides sustenance, the grain and wine. But it is also, literally, the tomb. It has a direct, visceral connection to the cycle of life, death, and the underworld.
That makes the image of opening it so much more powerful. It's not opening a jeweler box, it's like unsealing a tomb. It's opening a portal to the underworld.
Precisely. And there's a prominent theory by the classicist Jane Ellen Harrison that links this myth directly to a real-world festival in Athens called the Anthesteria.
The Anthesteria, what was that?
It was a 3-day spring festival dedicated to Dionysus. On one of the days, the main event was the ceremonial opening of the jars, the pithoi of the new wine from the previous autumn's harvest. It was a big celebration.
Sounds like a party.
It was, but it had a very spooky side. It was also believed that during the Anthesteria, the spirits of the dead, the Kyries, would rise from the underworld and roam the earth among the living. People would chew buckthorn and paint their doors with pitch to ward them off.
So opening the jar was a ritual act that coincided with releasing spirits.
Yes. The opening of the wine jar was symbolically linked to the opening of the earth and the release of chthonic powers. So the pithos connects Pandora directly to the earth, to agriculture, to the cycle of seasons, and to what lies beneath. It is a cosmic object.
And when Erasmus turns it into a little box, a pyxis.
He defangs it. He severs all of those deep, dark, earthy connections.
Ah.
He turns a cosmic event involving the release of chthonic powers into a domestic anecdote about a naughty girl who couldn't keep her hands off a pretty box.
It completely diminishes the scale. It goes from unleashing the powers of the underworld to, oops, I ruined the surprise.
And this connects directly to the broader issue of how the myth frames gender and blame. Because when you look at the archetypes here, the parallel with the story of Eve in the book of Genesis is just, well, it's impossible to ignore.
Oh, absolutely. The first woman. The woman whose curiosity leads to disaster. The woman who single-handedly ruins paradise for everyone. It's the same beat sheet.
It's the exact same narrative structure. In the Hebrew Bible, Eve is created as a companion for Adam, but she's the one who is tempted by the serpent and seeks the forbidden knowledge, the fruit. And that leads to the expulsion from the Garden of Eden.
Right.
In Greek myth, Pandora is created specifically as a punishment, but her action opening the jar has the same result. It ends the Golden Age and brings suffering into the world.
And in both stories, curiosity is framed as a sin, or at least a fatal character flaw.
And specifically, a female character flaw. It's portrayed as a lack of self-control, a susceptibility to temptation, a kind of inherent unreliability. And this connection wasn't lost on later artists. There's a famous Renaissance painting by Jean Cousin the Elder from around 1550. It's called Eva Prima Pandora.
Eve the first Pandora.
Exactly. It visually merges them into a single figure. You see this nude woman lounging in a cave, holding a skull, resting her hand on a jar, and there's an apple branch with a snake wrapped around it hanging right above her.
So it's literally saying, look, these are the same woman, and they're both death bringers.
It's the ultimate synthesis of the two foundational myths of female blame in Western culture. It is a heavy, heavy burden to place on half the human race for the next 3,000 years.
It really is. And this is where we need to look at the psychological impact of these stories. We have a source here. It's titled Blaming Beauty for the Beast, and it uses Jungian theory to look at how these myths function as well as ideological tools.
Right, because for Carl Jung, these archetypes aren't just stories we tell for entertainment. They are primordial images that exist in our collective unconscious. They're like the pre-installed software of the human brain.
And that software can be programmed with some serious biases.
Exactly. Jung saw the archetypes themselves as neutral patterns, but when they manifest in specific cultural stories, they can be used to reinforce specific power dynamics, in this case, patriarchy. The source argues that these myths empower the belief that women are inherently dangerous, deceitful, or ultimately responsible for male suffering.
Now, the source makes some really intense comparisons between Greek myths and modern legal cases involving sexual assault. And I want to be careful here because these are very sensitive topics, but the parallels the source draws are striking, specifically about how society assigns blame.
They're deeply uncomfortable parallels, but they're instructive for understanding how these ancient patterns persist. The source argues that the way we often treat victims in high-profile cases mirrors the exact narrative structure of these myths. For example, it compares the myth of Medusa to the Desiree Washington case involving Mike Tyson back in 1991.
Can you break that down for us? How did those two connect?
Well, let's look at the myth of Medusa. In the original telling, she was a beautiful maiden, a priestess of Athena. She was raped by the god Poseidon inside Athena's temple, a horrific violation.
Right. She was the victim.
She was the victim. But who got punished? Medusa did. Athena, enraged that her temple was desecrated, turned her into a monster with snakes for hair, whose gaze turns men to stone.
So the victim is punished and turned into the monster.
Precisely. The source argues that in the Tyson case, the victim, Desiree Washington, was similarly vilified in the court of public opinion. She was turned to stone by public shaming and scrutiny, while the perpetrator, because of his celebrity and power, largely retained his status. Her identity was effectively erased or beheaded by the media narrative, much like Perseus later beheads Medusa.
That is a really stark parallel.
And they don't stop there. They compare the myth of Leda, who was raped by Zeus disguised as a swan, to the case of Samantha Geimer and Roman Polanski. The myth often aestheticizes the violence, it minimizes it, framing it as a kind of divine seduction, and focusing on the beauty of the swan or the divine nature of the perpetrator.
So the perpetrator's status excuses the act.
Yes, the source argues that the narrative around Polanski often did the same thing, minimizing the crime, calling it a lapse, and focusing on his status as an artistic genius, much like Zeus is revered as the king of the gods, despite his endless predatory actions.
And there was a third comparison, right? Regarding intoxication.
Yes, the myth of Aura, a huntress who was drugged with wine and then raped by Dionysus, the god of wine. The source parallels this with the well-known case of Emily Doe and Brock Turner. It highlights this recurring pattern where alcohol is used as a weapon to incapacitate a victim, yet culturally, the blame is often shifted to the victim for having consumed the alcohol in the first place.
The "she should have known better" or "she was asking for it" narrative.
Exactly. The Jungian takeaway from all of this isn't just that people are consciously malicious or sexist, though they can be. It's that these are shadow archetypes. These patterns persist because they are buried deep in our collective unconscious. We reenact these ancient myths, blaming the woman, excusing the powerful male figure, because we haven't brought these archetypes into the light of consciousness to examine and resolve them.
And the myth of Pandora is the ultimate version of that. It provides a subconscious, foundational justification for viewing women as the original source of all trouble.
That's the argument. It's the master narrative of blame.
That is heavy. But it really shows why these bedtime stories matter so much. They aren't just stories. They shape our legal systems, our media narratives, our concept of justice. But here is the big twist in our story. This is where we get to reclaim something. The research suggests Pandora wasn't always the villain.
This is the lost goddess theory, and it is absolutely fascinating. If you look at pottery that predates Hesiod's poems, or even some alternative traditions from the same time, we find a very different figure. We find a figure labeled Anisidora.
Anisidora, and that means?
It means she who sends up gifts.
Sends up gifts, not all gifted. That sounds significantly better than beautiful evil.
It's a complete inversion. In these older depictions on vases, she isn't being molded from clay by Hephaestus like some kind of, divine robot. She is shown rising up from the earth. She is an earth goddess, a manifestation of Gaia or Demeter.
So she is Mother Nature, literally.
Essentially, yes. She is the source of all bounty. And in that context, the jar she's associated with, the pithos, isn't full of evils. Remember, a pithos stores grain and wine, the stuff of life. So the original story was likely that the jar of Anisidora contained the blessings of the earth. Fertility, food, abundance, life itself.
So Hesiod, what did he do to that story?
Hesiod, or the patriarchal tradition he was recording, performed what scholars call a patriarchal inversion. He took a powerful generative goddess who was all-giving, Anisidora, and turned her into a passive manufactured woman who was all-gifted, Pandora, meaning she was an object assembled by male gods to trick men.
He took the jar of blessings and turned it into a jar of curses.
Exactly. He turned the ultimate provider into the ultimate burden. It is one of the most successful and destructive rebranding campaigns in human history. He delegitimized the earlier, perhaps matriarchal earth goddess traditions and replaced them with a narrative where woman is a secondary, derivative creation meant to punish man. He took the generative power of the earth and reframed it as a destructive, dangerous force.
So, okay. We've got the box that's actually a jar. We've got the curse that was originally a blessing. But we still have that one final confusing thing left in the jar to deal with. Hope.
Ah, Elpis. The problem of hope.
Why is this a problem? I mean, hope is good, right? Hope floats. Keep hope alive. We generally view hope as an unequivocally positive force.
That's our modern and largely Christianized view of it. But in the context of the Greek myth, its presence is a huge philosophical debate. Just think about the logic of it. Why was hope in a jar full of evils?
Right. If I have a jar of cookies and I find a wrench at the bottom, I'm confused. If the jar is explicitly filled with plague, death, and misery, what on earth is hope doing in there?
Well, there are two main ways to read this, and they are completely at odds with each other. The first is the optimistic reading.
Okay, what's that?
This view argues that the jar functions as a pantry, or maybe a residence. The evils were stored there, they escaped to plague us, but hope was caught and preserved inside for humanity's use.
So it's a mercy. It's the one good thing we were allowed to keep.
Exactly. Zeus, in his strange and terrible wisdom, allowed us to keep one tool, one comfort, to help us cope with all the misery he had just unleashed on us. It's the silver lining.
That's the version I learned in school. It's the comforting version. But there's a darker one.
There's a much darker one, the pessimistic reading. This view argues that the jar is not a pantry, it's a prison. The items inside were evils. Therefore, if hope was in the jar alongside plague and sickness, then hope must be an evil too.
Hope isn't evil. How could that possibly work?
The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche was a huge proponent of this view. In his book Human, All Too Human, he argues that Zeus didn't want man to simply give up and throw his life away, no matter how much he suffered. Zeus wanted man to keep on being tormented, so he gave man hope.
To what end?
Nietzsche wrote, and I'm paraphrasing here, that hope is the most evil of evils because it prolongs man's torment.
Wow, that is incredibly bleak. It's the idea that false hope just keeps you suffering because you keep thinking things will get better, so you never quit or find a real solution. Keeps you chained to the treadmill of misery.
Exactly. It's the carrot on the stick that you can never reach, ensuring you keep pulling the cart. And there's a linguistic nuance here that supports this darker reading.
What's that?
The Greek word elpis doesn't cleanly translate to our modern positive concept of hope. A better, more neutral translation would be expectation.
Expectation? That's different.
It's very different. Expectation can be of good things or of bad things. You could expect a gift, or you could expect a beating. It's simply about the anticipation of the future. Now remember, who has the power to see the future?
Prometheus. Foresight.
Right. Humanity doesn't have foresight. We are explicitly denied that divine attribute. We can't see what's actually coming.
So we're just stuck with Elpis. With blind expectation.
We are stuck with blind expectation. And the fact that it remained under the rim of the jar, as Hesiod writes, is interpreted by some scholars to mean that true foresight, true knowledge of what's to come, is permanently denied to us. We have all the suffering, but we don't have the divine ability to know when or if it will end. All we have is this vague, gnawing sense of expectation.
That actually connects really well to the psychology of why we would open the jar in the first place. Because if Elpis is expectation, then curiosity is the overwhelming drive to resolve that expectation. We just have to know what's in there.
Precisely. And this brings us directly to a modern psychological concept called the Pandora effect.
This is a real term in behavioral science. It's not just a metaphor.
Oh, it's a real, documented phenomenon. There was a fascinating study, it's cited in our sources, that wanted to test this specific drive. They literally called it the Pandora effect to describe this maladaptive form of curiosity that leads us to expose ourselves to potentially negative, even painful outcomes.
How on earth did they test that? Did they give people a box full of flakes?
Nothing that dramatic, thankfully. They use electric shock pens.
Okay, that's still pretty dramatic.
It is. They brought participants into a room and gave them a set of these pens. Some pens were marked with red or green stickers. These represented certain outcomes. If you clicked a red pen, you knew for a fact nothing would happen. If you clicked a green one, you knew for a fact you would get a mild electric shock.
Okay, so a rational person would just click the red pens and avoid the green ones. Simple.
That would be the rational choice. But then they introduced pens with yellow stickers. These represented uncertain outcomes. If you clicked a yellow pen, you might get shocked, or you might not. It was a complete mystery, a 50-50 chance.
And what did people do?
Overwhelmingly, people clicked the yellow pens. They were something like 5 times more likely to click the uncertain yellow pens than either the safe red ones or the definitely painful green ones.
Even though they knew pain was a very likely result.
Even knowing that. The conclusion of the study was just fascinating. It suggests that curiosity is a fundamental drive to close an information gap. And that drive is so powerful that it can actually override our instinct for self-preservation and our fear of negative consequences.
I just have to know what's in the box.
We have to know. The psychological discomfort of not knowing, of living with that uncertainty, is actually worse to the human brain than the near certainty of physical pain. We open the box because the mystery itself is a form of torment. We would rather be shocked than be left wondering.
That explains so much about human behavior. I mean, it explains why we watch horror movies through our fingers. It explains why we doom scroll through bad news on social media. And it definitely explains our relationship with technology.
Yes, it does.
Which brings us to the final leg of our journey today, the modern metaphors.
Because we are opening a lot of very powerful boxes right now.
And the phrase opening Pandora's box is thrown around constantly in tech circles, especially and almost always when people talk about artificial intelligence.
It is the dominant metaphor for AI, without a doubt. And it fits perfectly on multiple levels. First, there's the concept that AI engineers themselves use, the black box.
Which, in AI terms, means?
It refers specifically to deep learning algorithms and neural networks. We know the input, we know the data we feed into the system, and we know the output, the answer or the image it gives us. But we often don't actually know how the neural network reached its conclusion.
The process is hidden.
The internal logic is completely opaque, even to the programmers who built it. The AI has taught itself patterns and connections that are often invisible to human analysis. Its reasoning is hidden inside the jar, so to speak.
So we are actively using a tool that we don't fully understand. That feels very Epimethean. That's hindsight.
Right.
We are accepting the gift without fully understanding the mechanism inside.
Is the definition of Epimethean thinking. We are dazzled by the utility, by the fire, but we cannot see or comprehend the internal logic. And the other key parallel, of course, is irreversibility. The myth emphasizes that once the plagues are out of the jar, you can't stuff them back in.
That's the classic genie is out of the bottle idea.
Exactly. Once a powerful algorithm is released into the wild, once a hidden bias is baked into a system that determines credit scores or criminal sentencing, or once a piece of sophisticated malware is unleashed, it replicates, it spreads. You cannot recapture it. It has a deceitful nature, to borrow Hesiod's phrase about Pandora. It operates independently of its original creator.
Our sources actually go so far as to divide modern tech leaders into two camps based on this myth, the Prometheans and the Epimetheans.
Yes, and it's a really useful framework. The Prometheans are the ones urging caution, the ones trying to exercise foresight. They're looking ahead at the potential risks. People like the late Stephen Hawking or Bill Gates, who have repeatedly warned about the existential risks of superintelligence.
They're saying, hold on, let's look at the consequences before we accept this gift.
Right. They're telling their brother not to accept the gifts from Zeus. And then you have the Epimetheans.
The hindsight crowd.
These are the optimists, or perhaps just the proponents of the move fast and break things philosophy. People like Mark Zuckerberg are often cited in this category in our notes. They tend to embrace the new technology, release it, and then figure they can deal with the consequences, the hindsight, after they happen. They believe the benefits of the fire far outweigh the risks of opening the jar.
But with some of this new tech, hindsight might be way too late, which is especially true when we move from software to, well, to biology.
And this is the other major area where the metaphor is used constantly, CRISPR and genetic engineering.
This feels like the ultimate unclosable box.
It really is, because unlike software, which you can theoretically patch or delete, editing the human germline, that's the DNA in sperm and eggs, affects not just one person, but all of their descendants. It affects all future generations.
It's a permanent release into the human gene pool.
It's permanent. If you make a mistake there, or if you introduce a change that has unforeseen side effects a few generations down the line, that change is propagated forever. And the potential risks mirror Hesiod's plagues almost too perfectly.
How so?
We worry about designer babies, creating a permanent biological underclass, leading to new forms of eugenics, that's social strife and sorrow. We worry about the accidental or intentional release of newly engineered pathogens via DIY biokits. That's sickness and plague on a global scale.
It really is the same story, isn't it? We are offered this incredible gift. Here, edit out the gene for Huntington's disease. Or here, have this super intelligent chatbot that can solve any problem. And it looks beautiful. It looks like a Kalon Kacon.
A beautiful evil. And we are driven by that biological Pandora effect, that deep curiosity to open it up and see what it can do, often ignoring the warning labels. We can't resist clicking the yellow pen.
There is one slightly lighter example of this metaphor in our notes, which I think is kind of funny. The Pandora's Box arcade system.
Val chuckles.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a very literal and commercial interpretation of the myth. There's a piece of hardware, mostly produced in China, called the Pandora's Box. It's a little board that you can plug into an arcade cabinet or a TV.
And what does it do?
It contains thousands and thousands of retro video games. It uses software emulation to run everything from Street Fighter to Pac-Man to Donkey Kong. It's marketed as this incredible, all-gifted device, one box, endless entertainment.
The ultimate gift for a gamer.
But
Woo!
legally, it opens a massive box of copyright infringement and intellectual property lawsuits. These devices usually come preloaded with unlicensed copies or ROMs of these games. So while it's a wonderful gift to the end user, for the companies that actually own the rights, like Nintendo or Capcom, it's a plague of piracy.
So it represents that same tension, an immense desirable benefit that's delivered through a method that disrupts the established order and has a dark side.
It's fascinating how that name, Pandora, just sticks to anything that is both tempting and deeply troublesome.
Mm.
It is the perfect archetype of the dangerous gift. It resonates because we instinctively know that every major technological leap forward comes with a shadow.
So to sum this all up, we've gone from a clay jar buried in the Greek earth to the inscrutable black boxes of Silicon Valley. We've seen how a single translation error turned a piece of agricultural equipment into a jewelry box. And we've seen how a powerful goddess of the earth was rebranded as a trap for men.
It's been quite a journey, and I think it ultimately brings us right back to that fundamental question of human nature.
What does this all mean for us, living right now, surrounded by jars we're tempted to open?
I think the myth isn't really about the girl, and it's not really about the box or the jar. It's about the fundamental split inside all of us. We all have a bit of Prometheus in us. We want to look ahead. We want to be safe. We want to control our environment with foresight. But we also have a lot of Epimetheus. We are so easily dazzled by the shiny new thing. And layered on top of that, we have that biological wiring, that Pandora effect, that almost compels us to open the lid just to see what will happen.
We are hardwired to press the button.
We really are. And I think that means we have to be incredibly conscious of that impulse. We have to understand that our hope or our expectation for the future can't just be blind optimism that things will work out in the end. We have to actively cultivate that Promethean foresight. We need to look at the jar, respect what might be inside, and think 3 steps ahead before we even touch the lid.
I want to leave everyone with a final provocative thought about Elpis, about that hope or expectation that was left trapped in the jar.
It is the great lingering question of the myth.
If we take the pessimistic reading that the jar is a prison and everything inside is an evil, and if hope is still trapped inside, does that mean we are actually living in a world without true hope?
A hopeless world.
A hopeless world? Or is it the other way around? Is the fact that we haven't accessed that final item, that we haven't exhausted our hope or seen what it truly is that the only thing keeping us going? Is the fact that it's still under the rim the one thing that saves us from total despair?
That is a thought to keep you up at night. Maybe the mystery of hope is the only thing powerful enough to counteract the certainty of all the plagues. If we ever let hope out, maybe you'll just fly away and be gone for good.
Something to mull over next time you're tempted to click on a link you probably shouldn't or open a package you didn't order. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
My pleasure. Keep that lid on tight.
See you next time.